morning, good evening. I am so excited that you are here with us today. I am Dr. Renita, educational leadership strategist, and I am so excited that you are here for Leadership Live tonight. Oh my goodness. For those of you all who are like, lady, who are you for real? I am Dr. Renita, once again, educational leadership strategist. And that simply means I love to work with growing and inspiring leaders to become more authentic in their leadership, empower their fellowship, and at the end of the day, have a greater impact on the world. I am also a wife and mother of 4. I birthed 2 children and I own 2 children. I own them because I fed them for so long. Like I've had them for years and years and years and years and years. So they're mine. They're my kids. And that journey led to me authoring the book Stepmom, Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs. It's just such an amazing, candid story of blending a family and the leadership it takes to do that. I'm also the authoress of While You Were Sleeping, the Perfect Children of All Ages book. And once again, it was inspired by my kids because parental leadership is a special place. And I'm so glad that I've been blessed to do so for so long. I am also the founder of The Refining Life, a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide you with experiences to have your mindset shifted so that you can lead a more positive and productive life. I'm a mentor. I am a coach. I'm a speaker. I'm an MC, which I've gotten to do a lot more of lately, which I've had so much fun with. I am a performer. I just rapped The Wiz just a little bit ago, getting to be Atta Pearl. And anytime I get to play a character, it is a beautiful thing to be able to transform myself and to translate a story in different worlds. I am also a producer, so I'm so excited to be producing Leadership Live. We're in season 4. We did it in 19, we did it in 21, 22, and here we are in year 2023. And I have some amazing friends to bring to you. I know you've already seen the rest of the season. If you haven't, go ahead back, catch the other episodes from this season, even previous seasons. They're available on YouTube and Facebook. But I have another amazing guest tonight. I mean, like, she's fabulous. Like, and I've known her and I've watched her, and she's doing like these really, really big things, like gigundous things. And so let me just, without further ado, let me go ahead and bring her into the camera. Here she is, Miss Constance Jones. Look at Constance.
Good to see you, Dr. Renita.
Well, good to see you too.
Yes.
Oh,
yes, and congratulations on The Wiz, and congratulations on your 4th season of doing this very important work and having these conversations. Like, I'm not the only one who's busy. You are certainly busy and up to some amazing things. So kudos to you.
Thank you so much. Well, I know some things about you, which made me extra excited knowing that you were going to be our guest tonight. But the other people kind of need to know who you are too. So I'm going to step away and give you a moment to introduce yourself to the people.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Renita. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. And thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Constance Jones, but most people call me CJ. I am a proud Durham, North Carolina native. That is where Dr. Renita and I first met. We used to sing together in various groups, and singing is something that is very core to my spirit and my soul that I enjoy and do even today. I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I majored in business administration, and I actually chose that major initially because of this wonderful job I had throughout high school and part of college working at Foot Locker. I thought it was really cool to sell shoes and was exposed to the various business components behind that. And so that's kind of how I chose my major at UNC Chapel Hill. After that, I went into Johnson & Johnson and did pharmaceutical sales for a few years, and then had the privilege of attending Harvard Business School, where I graduated from there in 2008 with my MBA. After that, I moved to Chicago and landed this really cool job working in the spa operations industry for Hyatt hotels. And in addition to loving singing, I also love to go to the spas and very much a big believer in health and wellness. And I did that for a while. But you know what? You just can't knock your calling. I come from a very proud family of tobacco farmers in North Carolina, and my mom was the only one of 8 kids to go to college and graduate from college. And her perseverance and her exposure to higher education opened up so many doors for me that many folks in my family did not have access to. And so I was always doing things in education outside of my 9 to 5. And one day I just decided it was just purpose and my spirit, my calling, to start committing my full-time self to education. So then I transitioned to the KIPP Foundation. I worked there for 6 years as a national network of charter schools, for those of you who do not know KIPP. And then I became the Chief External Affairs Officer, where I currently am at Noble Schools in 2015. Did that for 3 years, was promoted to president, and then took over the organization in November 2018 as the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO. So I've been in that role now for about 4.5 years. I have the blessing and privilege of serving over 12,000 students here in Chicago, students and families who are primarily in underrepresented, underserved communities here in our city. The vast majority, 98%, are Black or brown. And I have 1,600 incredible, hardworking educators and teachers and staff who show up every single day and make this work possible. And we are in the best time of year. We are in the process of graduating over 3,000 seniors because we are a predominantly high school network. 17 of our 18 schools are high schools, and they are making their final college decisions. The scholarships and grants are continually rolling in. Last year's class got over $500 million in scholarships and grants. And so we focus really, really hard on securing these resources for our students, because we do serve such an underserved, under-resourced population of kids and families, and they'll be going off to college. Traditionally, 80% of them will go off to college, with most of them going off to 4 years colleges and universities. So I'm really excited. This is, again, one of my favorite times of the year, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Dr. Renita and all of you.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So for anybody who's ever seen this show before, you know that I am a veteran educator. So hearing about graduations and hearing about these wonderful scholarships and how these students have been pushed to go beyond and do what maybe some even first generation, and just having the opportunity and representing the underrepresented in a way, and empowering them to go do all these amazing things. This is so exciting here. Like everything in me just started.
Good. I mean, the feeling's mutual. I totally understand that sentiment, because I feel it very much as well.
Absolutely. So Constance, we spoke and we chose the topic of authentic leadership. Mm-hmm. And I am so excited to delve into that with you today, because one, because of where you are and what you've done, and, having experienced you in my life earlier in life, and to watch, your journey kind of from the outside looking in. And then also to hear about your journey from Foot Locker to the CEO of Noble Schools. I mean,
yeah,
that in itself leads me to believe that there were certain choices. In April, I do a soft skill of the month every month, and our April soft skill of the month was decision making. Mm-hmm. So it tells me that somewhere along the way, you were making decisions that not only led you to that position then, and you talked about loving sneakers,
and I still do. I very much still do.
But now, making decisions along the way that would carry you from Foot Locker to being a CEO of an amazing network of schools. How many students? I know it was
12,000 across 18 schools, 17 high schools, and 1 middle school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we serve approximately 12 to 13% of the entire Chicago Public Schools high school population. So that's how large we are. And Chicago Public Schools is the 4th largest district in the country.
Yes. And so you have gone from sneakers to students and staff and families, because we have to think about, when you're thinking about schools, you have to think about all the stakeholders. It's not just the students. It's not just the staff. You are serving an entire community and making these decisions that will either propel them to greatness, which we clearly see that they are, or it could be to their detriment. So when you were making the decisions on that journey from Foot Locker to the CEO, are there some major decisions like that authentically were just a part of who you were? Like you talked about going back to your educational roots. how did authenticity, just really being who you are and knowing who you are, help lead to this decisions for you to go on that path?
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Renita. That's a great question. And, it's funny because you acknowledge like the various stakeholders, like, families and community members and others who surround us every single day. It made me think about my first email this morning was at 6:30 this morning in response to a parent who had reached out to me about a situation concerning their child. And a lot of CEOs might not prioritize responding to various stakeholders, or they might prioritize, responding to one instead of the other. But like, I have a hard, fast rule that when our teachers and our parents and our students reach out, like, we respond. It doesn't matter what level of the organization you're at. The reason why I bring that into the answer to your question is because there are certain decisions that I've made, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but there's also an ecosystem of people around me who have made like my trajectory possible that like we have to, bring into this space. And for me, it was very much the support of my family growing up. My mom, as an educator, a 30-year veteran teacher, she taught elementary school for 30 years before she retired. Like, she was key in like exposing me to the impact of education, not just through her own personal story, but also through like the thousands of kids she touched throughout her career, whose lives were literally transformed and forever, and not just their individual lives, but their entire family life. And then also being very involved in my church, and as like singing in the praise team, even to this day at my church, like that community has been so core in helping me, supporting me throughout my entire life. As far as the decisions that I've made and how that links to my authentic leadership, one of the things that has always been true about me is I've always been very like driven, very self-motivated. And some people are like externally or intrinsically motivated. And for me, like, there is just this deep belief that, not everything is in my locus of control, but there are some things that are in my locus of control. And I'm trying to like do what I can to like propel like my trajectory and to create the life that I want to live. And that doesn't mean that like, it is absent obstacles. Lord knows I've had my share of obstacles, which I'm happy to talk about. But I've tried to really like, focus on what I can do to change my life for the better, despite what might be in my path. How can I find a way? And one of the things that I've had to learn over time, because it has been very hard, is that I do my best and I lead my best when I'm leading from a place of like honoring who I am as an individual and what I uniquely bring to the table. Mm-hmm. So in almost every role that I've had, going back to when I first started working at Johnson & Johnson after I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, I remember I worked for Johnson & Johnson, their ortho McNeil division. And I remember being the youngest Black female, and I want to say the only Black female in the sales rep in the Mid-Atlantic region. Oh, wow. I remember when I was going to Harvard Business School being one of less than, I want to say 6 Black or African American folks in my section, because we had these sections of 90 people. When I, came to Noble, I was the first person of color, the first Black woman, the first person of color to serve on the Chiefs team. All of my colleagues were white men. Like, I have been put in these situations where I've often been the first and only. And with that, it is my responsibility to show up and reflect and share the experiences and perspectives that are uniquely mine in order to contribute to the better good of the work we're setting out to accomplish. Now, that has not always been easy, but I've learned that I do my best work, particularly as service to those I serve, when I show up in that way. So I've had to learn some tough lessons along the way, but like I've gotten to that place over time where that's been something that is core to how I lead and how I show up.
Well, that's amazing to hear a person acknowledge that without better words to say, you're a barrier breaker.
Mm-hmm.
You break barriers. You are a ceiling crasher. And that is a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because to keep hearing the theme in your life, I was the only one. I was one of few.
Mm-hmm.
I looked around and I only saw me.
Mm-hmm.
Yet and still, you have continued to propel forward.
Mm-hmm.
Even in situations where they had no choice but to see who you were, see
Mm-hmm.
how you do, see what you do, and they pushed you to your next level. And so it is beautiful to hear that.
Yeah.
What helped you? Like, do you feel like even earlier in life, did you discover this thing within you? And if so, what told you that, you know what, I think this is my thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the answer is not really. Like growing up, like particularly in middle school, I went through a series of experiences where I was bullied, and to the point where, I would have a complete and total, breakdown at school, and the counselor would be like, call my dad, Mr. Jones, like come pick her up, like she needs a break, like, she's done it again. It was a very fragile and insecure time for me, where I had I questioned my own abilities, my own self-confidence. And I remember the day I graduated from Harvard Business School, and this was a big deal. Like, this is a big deal. And so, for example, my sister flew up to see me graduate, and my sister is older than me, and it was the first time that she ever been on a plane, and she's in her her late 20s at this point. I mean, it was a big deal. My entire family flew up, and we flew back down the day after graduation, and we were sitting in the family room in North Carolina. My dad was just looking at me, and he didn't say anything. And I was like, Dad, like, what's going through your mind? And he was like, don't take this the wrong way at all, but during those days when I was coming and picking you up from, middle school, because you just would break down, the kids were giving you such a hard time. Never in my wildest dreams could I imagine that you would one day be a Harvard Business School graduate. Like, he's like, you always want the best for your child. But, he was like, I wasn't sure if you had what it took to like overcome the many obstacles that he knew would be in my way, because that's life, and be able to achieve something so great. So I really struggled with, encountering a challenge and encountering adversity and people saying bad things about me, and then being able to bounce back and hold my head up high. And I attribute it to a few things, like having a supportive family. At that time, my church in North Carolina, having a supportive church family. I attribute it to certainly like the grace of God, like providing me with the fortitude to be able to like go back in school the next day after I had left, the day before, because I was, not doing well. I attribute it to a lot of things. I attribute it to, and this was more so later in my life, like high school, but I really like think about my college experience, like surrounding myself by Black women who were incredibly fierce and determined. And I'm still best friends with these women to this day. They are in my core group, and it's been like 20 years. Because we'll celebrate our 20th college anniversary reunion this fall, which is crazy. And we still meet up like at least once a year, even though, some are in New York and Atlanta and Dallas, and I'm in Chicago, and we come together and we fellowship and we catch up. But like these are women who continually push me to be great. And despite the life obstacles and challenges, have said, girl, you got this. Like, and we lean on each other as we're navigating things. So I haven't always been this way, but I've had an incredible, support system. And, that's why I kind of start off thinking about like reflecting on like just the folks that, we're surrounded by every day, personally and professionally, and how they're so core and key. And then also, those internal things that for me, I really had to develop over time. And over a lot of like crucible moments and obstacles where I fell down and had to get back up again and learn the lesson and just keep right on going.
Well, the beauty is, and that's a phrase I use with my children all the time, honey, learn the lesson.
You gotta learn the lesson. If you're gonna go through it, don't make it all for naught. Learn the lesson. Yeah.
So you don't have to keep going through it. And you have very clearly learned the lesson, and you continuously learn lessons. But what I've heard over and over again within you, and I am the exact same way, is that your village helps you to do it. I think about being village minded, being, mindful and very clear that you are a part of a village and your village is important to you. They're yours and you're theirs.
Yeah.
And so as we're thinking about, all these things that your village has done for you, how they supported you, propelled you forward, even like helped you to get up when you were down. When we're thinking about authenticity and authentic leadership, when you think about people who you are a part of their village, they're like, oh yeah, CJ, she's a part of my village, or Constance, depending on what part of life you know her from. Yeah. She's a part of my village. How do you encourage the people who you are their village support? How do you encourage them to be authentic and to lead authentically?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dr. Renita. And I am a true believer that you can't expect something from someone that you're not willing to give yourself, right? So for me, in order for me to expect authenticity from those around me, whether it's my colleagues at work or my friends or my family members, I have to show up authentically myself. And that has been really tough. Early in my career, earlier in life, I was in a lot of white spaces where for me, it was tough for me to have the courage to show up and be myself, right? And again, like I just eventually learned over time from making some mistakes or from like just being tired of like, feeling like I had to put on a face because that takes a lot of energy to do every single day. Like I've learned over time that that's actually not the path. And so, one of the things that I tell folks, and this is key too, is particularly in a professional environment, like show up as your authentic self, but you also need to make sure that you're showing up as your highest self. Okay. Like, I want to make sure that I'm clear, particularly as you're navigating a professional environment, because we need to make sure that we're speaking our truths in a, constructive way, in a productive way, and like focus forward way. The reality is that there are certain ways, there's certain things that like should not show up in the workplace, right? If you aren't showing up, and being 100% 100 with like your friends or family members or your spouse, because oftentimes like that's just not the case, because we can't just like, say everything that's on our mind all the time with those folks, then you need to understand that in a professional environment, you need to make sure you have discretion. And you can show up as your highest self, but it might not 100% of the time be your authentic self. Like if you don't do that at home, like it's important for you to realize the boundaries and the guardrails for doing that here, because this is a workplace. It's all about like having like emotional intelligence, having discretion, understanding context, but you, in doing those things, also have a responsibility to be true to yourself, who you are, your purpose, the reason why you're at that table, which I do believe that a lot of time, the reason why I've been put at a lot of these tables is to be a voice of diversity and perspective. So now it's on me to carry that forward. And I carry that forward by honoring my truth and sharing my truth and being courageous and knowing that in those moments when I am courageous, just based on my faith, like it will be okay. And again, that's just something I've learned in time. Like it's very hard when you're in your early 20s and your experiences are more limited to have that understanding versus 20 years later, where you've been through some things in the workplace, you've been through some things like in these education environments, and you've just learned some lessons along the way.
Absolutely. And I love the thought that if you have to give guardrails and boundaries at home, why would you think that you wouldn't have to do that in a professional space as well. I mean, it just looks differently.
Yeah. And like, we just gotta name that. And this is something that like, I, again, have learned over time. I've learned that like needs to be named, like even within my workplace where I'm like, listen, I want you to show up as your authentic self, but you also need to show up as your highest self. If you're not all 100, like at home, you can't be all 100 at work. Like, and the reality is like, we're not sharing everything, the feedback with like our parents or our spouse, in 100 way. And there's a reason for that. And so we just gotta be mindful. I'm just asking folks to be mindful of the context, because that matters. And so it's like everything. It's a balance, and it's an understanding of knowing like what you can and can say when you should, but ultimately showing up as your highest authentic self, because that's when you're going to do your best.
Absolutely. And also realizing that those moments when you do decide to keep it 100 at home is usually the moment that you're choosing violence. It just is.
And there might be times when you have to choose violence.
Right.
There might be some times, trust me, there have been some moments where I've just like, but you can't do that. Like, you shouldn't be doing that every single day. Because then you might need to question, like, is this the right place? If I'm like, every single day, like, choosing violence, as you said, every single day, you might need to question, is this the right ecosystem and context for me? Right. But no, like, there are some days you got to choose violence. In your specific language. But like, but you got to be mindful. You got to be strategic sometimes. And I think that's key.
Absolutely. And so, you don't always need to have the argument. You don't always need to have the blow up. But if it is a day where if you don't have that blow up, you need to blow something up, because professionally, every now and again, we do need to blow up something so we can get back to the core of what it needs to be. So like you said, you just shouldn't be doing it every day. That is not what authenticity looks like. Authenticity is not the constant just digging and just craziness, because if so, then like you said, then this may or may not be the place for you. Maybe it was for you in a moment. Maybe you were sitting there and your purpose was to blow up one thing, and now it's time to move on. And if you don't decide to do it, I bet you somebody else will help you figure it out, because they will help you move on.
Yeah. And listen, like that like blasting off all the time, that takes its own energy too. So that's why, I mean, and that can be like as depleting, or more so as like, holding things back because you're, not wanting to be authentic in that moment. So like, it's all, this is one of the things I love about people and life. And, this stuff can be complex, right? And it's never, a single story. There in a single layer to a story. There are multiple layers and things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we're concluding, because I know we're coming up on the end of our time, one last thought.
Sure.
As you are thinking about living every day, because we continue to live, which means that we continue to have different experiences, and it continues to kind of shape who we are. How do you kind of assess your current place of authenticity? And how do you, because sometimes our experience causes us to morph. Yes, we have a core of who we are, but our new experiences have told us, have informed us something new about ourselves. How do you, keep that authenticity check? Like, where am I now? And then also, if there is something that needs to shift, how do you present that new shift to others?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dr. Renita. So for me, like, I am a very much like gut core instinct person. And I've learned this the hard way, right? There have been times where I've trusted my gut. It never lies. There have been times I've made bad decisions because I didn't trust my gut. So in terms of like that authenticity check, like, I'm often thinking like, what's going on in my gut? People call it instinct. Some people call it Holy Spirit, but whatever it is, I've learned to trust it. And so that's kind of like my check. Another check I have is like, am I able to sleep at night? Listen, I'm in a high up leadership, role. I have to make very tough decisions. Some of those decisions are rooted in data. A lot of those decisions are rooted in data. And then some of those, like, decisions are rooted in gut instinct. They're rooted in my values, high integrity, like, and so at the end of the day, if I'm able to sleep at night, it might have been a really tough decision, But if I am able to sleep at night because I know that it was like high integrity, high authenticity, like, what all the things, then that's something that I'm like, I'm kind of checking for internally, checking for. And so, I mean, and then I think it's also important because we start out this conversation talking about like the ecosystem, the people around you. I think it's important to surround yourself continually with people who will call out when they're like, that wasn't you, CJ, or what's going on there. Listen, I have people both within my job and outside of my job who do that for me constantly. Like, and that's good to have folks like who are comfortable enough to name for you, like, what's going on here, or that wasn't it, versus telling you what you want to hear. So I think that's important as well, to have that family of people who, and family, I mean, they could be like related or not.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I will definitely say I too, my village, my crew, my family, they make all the difference for me, and they have definitely helped me to check myself. Yes. Because they're like, Dr. Renita, no ma'am, absolutely not. Or they have been like, why aren't you doing that? Yeah. Why do you think you can't do that? They are some of my biggest cheerleaders, and I am so grateful to have them in my life. And so I know that you're busy. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of Leadership Live this evening. Your insight, I know, is getting ready to rock somebody's world. So all of the people who are watching today, everybody who may be watching on a replay, thank you for being here. And take a moment to check your authenticity. What is your gut telling you? What have people around you that you trust been telling you? How are you feeling in the spaces where you are? Are you choosing violence every day? What are those things that are happening? Or do you feel like this is the right, and maybe I need to go further? Maybe I need to push harder. Whatever that is, take that moment so authentically you can continue to walk in your purpose. You can continue to be a light in the places where you are. You can continue to empower those around you, and you can continue to make an impact that is literally changing the world every day. So, Constance Jones, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Dr. Renita. That was a beautiful summary. You're awesome. Thank you.
Everyone, we will be back again next week with Leadership Live. I hope that you've enjoyed tonight. Know that authentically you can be you, and you can be a positive change maker in this world. I love you. Keep your leadership all the way live, and I will see you next week.